There is a ship sitting at the bottom of the Aegean Sea right now, not in crushing darkness 3 miles down, not buried under silt in some unmapped trench. It is lying in around 120 meters of clear Mediterranean water, about 6 kilometers off the Greek island of Kea, fully mapped, fully surveyed, fully visible on sonar from above. Divers have swum through its corridors. Cameras have traced its hull. Jacques Cousteau's team located and surveyed it in 1975, and the world has known exactly where it is ever since. It is the largest ocean liner wreck on the planet, comparable in size to the Titanic, largely structurally intact, and it has been sitting in that channel since November 1916. The Titanic rests nearly 4 kilometers down in freezing North Atlantic darkness. The Britannic is right there, in warm water, in the daylight zone, and nothing has been done about it. That is the part that does not make sense, and the reasons why turn out to be stranger than the sinking itself. Before we start, what part of the world are you in? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. The Britannic lies on its starboard side at roughly 120 meters, bow pointing toward the seafloor, stern relatively preserved. It is 269 meters long. That is bigger than 2 football pitches, end to end. The hull is recognizable. The promenade deck is still there. Lifeboat davits extend outward, frozen mid-rotation. Marine growth, coral, sponge, encrustation has thickened across every surface, but beneath it, the steel holds its shape. Technical divers operating at the edge of recreational limits have reached the upper structures. Survey teams have mapped the interior using remotely operated vehicles. The wreck is not hidden. It is not unreachable. It sits in one of the most documented underwater locations in the Greek Aegean, a site visited by multiple international expeditions and studied in serious academic and naval contexts. And yet the wreck remains exactly where it landed in 1916, untouched, unraised, unresolved. The reason, on its surface, is legal. The Greek government designates the Britannic a protected underwater cultural monument. The UNESCO 2001 Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage restricts salvage, artifact removal, and any form of commercial exploitation on sites of this type. Greece has formally adopted that framework, and the Britannic sits in Greek territorial waters. That means no one may disturb it without permission, no artifact may be removed, and no private company may approach it with commercial salvage intent. When Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who found the Titanic, led a major expedition to the Britannic in 1995, his team required negotiated permits and operated under considerable legal constraints governing access to the site. The wreck is simultaneously one of the most accessible major shipwrecks in the world and one of the most legally locked. Survey technology goes in, nothing comes out. Physical intervention of any meaningful kind is prohibited. To understand why that protection exists, why this particular ship, in this particular channel, was given that particular status, you have to go back to what it actually was. The Britannic was the third of the White Star Line's Olympic-class ships, the largest vessels afloat at the time of their construction. Its older sisters were the Olympic and the Titanic. The Britannic launched on February 26, 1914. It was designed as a luxury ocean liner, with first-class dining rooms, grand staircases, and private promenades. It never carried a single paying passenger. Before it entered civilian service, the First World War began. The British government requisitioned it and converted it into His Majesty's hospital ship, HMHS Britannic, fitted with medical wards, operating theatres, and 3,300 beds. It was painted white with a green stripe and large red crosses on its hull and funnels, the internationally recognized markings of a protected medical vessel. On the morning of November 21st, 1916, while traveling through the Kea Channel in the Aegean toward the Dardanelles to collect wounded soldiers, an explosion tore through the forward section of the hull. The ship sank in 55 minutes. Of the approximately 1,066 people aboard, around 30 died, a remarkably low figure for a vessel that size, made possible by the relatively fast evacuation. The ship's story should have ended there. Instead, that was the point where it changed form. Why was it never raised? The obvious answer is that the war was still happening. November 1916 was deep inside a conflict that would not end for another 2 years. Salvage resources were committed elsewhere. The wreck posed no immediate navigational hazard at that depth. The British Navy made no serious attempt to recover the hull, and once the war ended, the administrative will to do so had dissolved entirely. The Britannic settled into an unusual limbo, physically in Greek territorial waters, classified as a British military vessel, a wartime loss with no civilian registry, no peacetime owner, and no clear legal authority assigned to manage it. But there is a deeper complication. The question of how it sank was never definitively resolved. Germany denied targeting a hospital ship. Post-war German Navy records attributed the sinking to mines laid weeks earlier in the Kea Channel by the submarine U-73, whose documented mine-laying operations in that exact area are a confirmed historical record. But some analysts have argued the explosion pattern and flooding speed were not consistent with a standard moored mine. The debate between mine and torpedo was never officially closed. That unresolved question, seemingly just a historical footnote, turns out to matter considerably more than it appears. The cause of the sinking shapes the legal identity of the wreck. If the Britannic was sunk by a German mine laid in a shipping lane, it was an accidental wartime casualty, a medical vessel that struck an indiscriminate weapon, not a deliberate act of war against a protected ship. If it was struck by a torpedo, the question of whether Germany violated the laws of naval warfare becomes live again, with implications for how the wreck is categorized and, in theory, which jurisdiction holds precedent over it. That legal distinction is not merely academic. It affects how war grave status is interpreted, whether the British government can assert a stronger claim over a vessel in Greek waters, and what, if anything, can be legally done with the site. There is a third complication. Some historians, including specialist researchers who have studied the wreck extensively, have pointed to evidence that portholes on the lower decks were left open, possibly to air out wards that had recently carried patients, in violation of standard naval protocol for a vessel in active waters. Open portholes would have dramatically accelerated flooding and may have made the difference between a survivable incident and a catastrophic loss. That claim has not been proven. It has not been disproven either. The same ambiguity that existed the morning the ship went down has never been resolved, and a century later, that ambiguity is still shaping what can and cannot happen to the wreck. Even setting aside the legal and historical questions, the engineering alone presents serious obstacles. Raising the Britannic is not technically inconceivable. 120 meters is not beyond the outer range of heavy salvage operations. But the ship has been corroding in salt water for over a century. The steel, however intact it looks in survey footage, has been weakening from the inside. Naval architects and marine engineers who have assessed the wreck have consistently noted that a lift attempt would likely cause catastrophic structural failure. The bow section has already partially collapsed. Sections of the hull are exhibiting accelerating corrosion. A vessel this size, at this depth, in this condition, would almost certainly break apart under the stresses of any lifting operation. The cost of even attempting it would run into hundreds of millions of dollars, with no government, military authority, or private institution willing to fund an operation with no commercial return and a high probability of destruction. And beyond engineering, there is the question of the dead. Around 30 people died aboard the Britannic. Their remains are almost certainly still somewhere inside that hull. The ship is officially recognized as a war grave. Families and descendants of those killed have consistently opposed any disturbance of the site. The wreck has also spent more than a century becoming an ecosystem. Marine biology, corals, sponges, fish populations have colonized every surface. Removing that structure would mean destroying a living environment built on the remains of a protected site. Every argument for intervention runs into a different wall. Inside the Britannic, the hospital ship inventory is largely still present. Medical equipment, supply stores, the contents of operating theaters that were never used on that final voyage. Greek maritime law strictly prohibits unauthorized access and the removal of any artifacts from the site. More concerning is the fuel. The Britannic's bunker tanks still contain oil, Estimates of the volume vary, and no major leak has been confirmed. But the threat is real. Recent survey expeditions have documented accelerating structural decay in the bow section. Researchers who have assessed the wreck note that without intervention, sections may collapse within decades. The longer nothing is done, the more is lost. And still, nothing is done. In the KEA Channel today, the surface looks like any other stretch of Aegean water. Blue, calm, unremarkable. 6 kilometers out from the island, there is nothing to mark what is below. But 120 meters down, the Britannic is still there, still lying on its starboard side, still corroding, still holding whatever is left of its medical wards and fuel tanks, and the 30 people who did not survive November 21st, 1916. It was built to be one of the great luxury liners of its era. It became a hospital ship instead. It never carried a passenger. It never completed a civilian voyage. And it never came home. It simply stopped in that channel and has been there ever since, fully known, fully mapped, and completely out of reach.